All right, here we go. Thanks for that, everybody on the technology side. Hopefully there's many people at home on Zoom wanting to watch this. So that's the goal. All right, so I'm Brian Wright. I'm the principal of Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative. How many first timers do we have in the room? No Planapalooza experience in the past week. Yeah, good. All right, good. A loyal crowd comes back. But I told you all to bring like 3 or 4 people with you. So how many people here carpooled and brought friends? Okay. All right. So we'll just count on everybody watching from home as we plan the future of their town. Hopefully they're all trusting in all of us to do the right thing for them. So for the one first timer, we have been here for several days now, and we've been doing all kinds of exciting things, getting to know people in the community. Jared, can you tap on the screen or something to make it work for me here? There we go. All right. So if you're at home on Zoom, use the chat option if you want to make a comment. So you click down near the button. If you're on your phone, there's the 3 dots, and then click on chat there. You can type in your comments, and we will answer them during Q&A at the end. So what we've done so far this week, we have been working on, and last week, I guess, been getting information from people on the web page that's been up for a while, so you can go in and put information, ideas, go do the mapping exercises, things like that. All the presentations have been on video, so people can, if they had missed one, they can catch up on it. We had the community kickoff presentation back in August, so that kind of introduced everyone to the zoning project that we're doing here. And then we've had a series of technical meetings over the past several days as well. So we talked about transportation, we talked about sustainability, and we also talked about community character and development. And and then we have had the studio open the whole time. So we set up our office in the back of the room. People have been dropping in, which was really nice to get people to come out over the weekend and keep us company and into the wee hours of the night. So that was excellent. Everybody's very diligent around here, so we appreciate that. And so here we are at the work in progress presentation. So people have been coming for a number of different reasons. A lot of people are, very interested in urban development in the future. People are also focused on the creek and traffic and transportation issues. I would say probably in order of priority, we heard the most about traffic, then about the creek, and then about the character of things. So we did this mapping exercise, and people put dots on here, red for things that need improvement, that don't love, green for things you do love, and blue for opportunity sites. So we tried to understand that, took all the dots from all the maps and put them into one, and you start to see a pattern developing here. You don't know that, probably Nolan's Road. You don't have to be in the front row to know that. And by the way, it's much better view up front than in the back. So this screen is great, but it's not that big. So here we go. Yeah, so technical meetings here, well attended, and we got the mapping exercises, different presentations, all the groups presented to their friends and neighbors and people that get to know each other and realize that everybody wasn't so different in what they're looking for in the future. We also roamed around a little bit. Jared went over and visited the turkey shoot, and so hopefully he's going to win a turkey, and that was good. Jared's one of our team members, by the way. So we talked about this already. Do you know what zoning is? You're the only new person here. So you're in 31st. Perfect. Okay, great. So I'm not going to do this slide. But just to clarify a few things that we'll talk about while we're here. So we'll be thinking about zoning differently, as I discussed, not just about uses, but we'll be looking at things like the height of buildings, which you already have in current zoning, but we think about the height, the number of stories, because the number of, all right, let's take a pop quiz. How tall is this building? Any 2 stories, right? Anybody want to guess how many feet? 25. 55? Exactly. Who knows? You don't know, right? But you have a metric in your zoning ordinance that says this many stories or this and or this number, right? And the number nobody really knows, nobody understands. And at some point there's sort of a negotiation and debate about how tall is too tall, and it usually has to do with a single project that came through the process somebody didn't like, and they're like, oh, it's that tall, and I don't like that, so that tall must be bad. So we just like to think about things in a number of stories. For instance, we like to think about setbacks and different buildings have different setbacks. Maybe most important, the frontage type, how the building addresses the street. And this is just one example of a multitude of different frontage types. This happens to be in a more village or mixed use area. And we also look at building types, so it's a mixed use building, sort of a small commercial building next to it. We look at things like glazing percentages, or how much glass is in the facade of the building, and depending on how much glass you have, the building feels more or less inviting and welcoming. If you imagine that there were no windows in this building, it would be this big blank brick wall. It would be pretty obnoxious experience to walk past there, right? And so you have these openings punched in, and so we focus on that as well. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is modernizing the code. It's really the main thing that we're doing. So we've been roaming around town, measuring our little measuring wheel and what we call synoptic surveys, so we can really be precise about what we're doing and not be arbitrary. We don't want anybody to come up at the end of this whole process and say, well, where did you get that number? Say, oh, well, the places that you put the green dots on that you love the most, or places that you mentioned to us as inspiration around the region or the country, we've looked at those and we understand exactly the measurements and dimensions of those places. And so we then also looking at your existing zoning. And as we've talked about, we're focused on the character of the community and the way it feels and how you experience it as a person, rather than just the uses. And so we're taking your use-based zoning districts and translating them into character. And we started to realize that some of them have very similar characteristics. The differences in them are so small, you would even wonder why they're separate districts. And so we started to consolidate a few. We have then taken your zoning map and using that translation table that I just showed you, started to create a translation of what your zoning would look like into these different character districts. And I'll tell you more about character districts in a minute. But anyway, as we go through the process, we'll refine this, and we'll start to look at it, and because right now, when you use the translation table, it doesn't take into consideration like reality. Like it assumes that all your zoning is accurate and correct, and everything that's built in the town actually is in compliance with the current zoning that's zoned, right? And so we have to look at those sorts of things. And then we'll start to refine this as we go. And so it won't be just a pure translation. We'll actually then apply zoning and planning concepts to it, and things that we've heard from all of you in the community of what you want to see in the future. And so it's sort of the art and science of it. But at the end of the day, this will become your new zoning map. So we'll be simplifying the document. We have done some of these things, and we'll be doing the rest of them shortly. Reorganizing sections, grouping similar and related topics, looking at putting all the definitions in a single location, so you don't have to hunt through the document. Thank goodness for the find function in a PDF, right? But hopefully you actually can just go to a definition section at the end of the day. Simplifying overly complicated text so that just regular people can read it. And we do have a land use attorney as our main code writer, but he's surrounded by a bunch of planners. And so we kind of go back and forth with legally, the planner jargon, and all of these things. So hopefully somewhere in the middle will be something that you all understand and is meaningful to you. And then we're also going to be reducing or eliminating subjective standards. We've heard about some of the problems that have a very subjective process and standards that are more kind of like the wish list. We sort of hope you kind of maybe will do this rather than you shall, you must do these things. So we'll be working that out through the process as well. And then, as I said, the district standard will emphasize character and context rather than just uses. So that will be vitally important. Now, for anybody who loves uses, remember, we will still have a use table in there, but it will be simplified. We're not going to have a million different uses of every possible thing you could, possibly think of. We will actually have categories that are much more compressed, because at the end of the day, when you have character as your first focus, there are only a few things that actually matter if they're next to each other. And so having a more categorical approach to the uses will be much simpler for all of you. And it also will allow people to do more with their property, which is nice. So it's like a win-win. You get the town you've always hoped for and dreamt about, and assuming that growth occurs and things may change a little. So you get that version of it, but you also have the ability to do more with your property. So as I mentioned, the different frontage types, so we'll be looking at that and we're dialing it in based on what's locally appropriate and not just generic, and building types as well. And so here, this was something that we talked a lot about this week, is building types and the understanding of what the different building types are. Everybody has in their mind a different image, as we talked about. I really pressed people, tell me what's your vision of character is. What does small town charm mean to you? And everyone had sort of different ideas, different places. One person would send me somewhere on Google that they had been before, and I would look at it, and somebody else would send me somewhere else. And I could see kind of like how they were thinking it was relevant to Nolensville, because it was, but they were vastly different in that character. So our job is to sort of help you guys boil it down and understand what it is that you're asking for and how to get it. But just to clarify, so when people talk about duplexes, here's a few examples of duplexes. So you see, they're identified by the fact that most of them have two doors. But other than that, if you didn't have the doors to look at, you wouldn't know. It looks like a single family house and fits right into the neighborhood. It's no problem. We've heard about tiny houses, people asking, hey, have you thought about that as a way for people to downsize or people to sort of get their first home, for people who aren't interested in having much of space. And so this is a bunch of different iterations of tiny houses. This is one of the interesting functions and features about some tiny houses. They can just be brought in and you have houses tomorrow. They go on foundations, and you see the ones on the TV that have wheels and they get pulled behind a truck and stuff. That's not usually what people mean when they're asking, can we have tiny houses around here? They mean small houses that are on a foundation. Also cottage court. So I talked about this a little bit through the process. So the idea of having a small green space, this is, a public space, but those who live around it feel some sense of ownership of it. Other people can come in, but you can see it can be, bigger houses, tiny houses, it could be a way to have stormwater features and have a rainwater in the middle, or you just have a little green space and you can put a park, or you can even put a community garden in there. So people want to tend a little lot of grass or a garden that can do that. Row houses. So we talked about townhouses, and a lot of people have said, like those townhouses over on so-and-so street, and I don't even know the townhouses they're referring to, but I know the townhouses they're referring to because I've seen them a million times. It's like a house without a town. It's called a townhouse, right? It's sort of, it really just means single family that's attached. And so here you can see this is one single family townhouse next to another one. Here, if you don't like traditional, here's a more modern version. I haven't heard anyone asking for more modern architecture yet, but just wanted to throw it in there just to make it clear that the things that we're talking about, a lot of them are independent of architectural style. And so that starts to get sorted out in the process. But there's a lot of different ways that people can do some great townhouses. This is probably the hottest topic when it comes to housing types. Multifamily apartments. We've heard over and over, not from everyone, just to be clear, but we've heard a lot. I'm not interested in multifamily, or I don't want apartments, or whatever. And so each time I'm saying, well, if you're talking about apartment complexes, I don't blame you, because that's definitely not small town character. It's definitely not what I hear you asking, or what the comprehensive plan talks about either. So these are multifamily buildings. These are apartments, for rent. And so some of them, I think this is a 16-unit building. This is 4. This is 4. Here's 6. Maybe even 12. I think there may be even some backside of that one too. And so when you start thinking about multifamily, think about multifamily that's appropriate for a village. And so get apartment complex out of your mind. And these are, very house-like. This is literally a single family house right next to this, and you would never know. It actually only has one door. The way you tell is look around the side and you see there's a multitude of meters on the side or mailboxes. But otherwise, you can't tell that it's multifamily. Now, you can get even more intense than this, more dense than this for sure, and still be village character, right? So I'm not limiting to this, but I just wanted you to sort of reset your thinking about what multifamily means or what apartments mean. We talked about live work units where somebody can own this building and they can either live above or they can rent it out to somebody. So that would be rental, that would be an apartment in that situation if they rented it out. But you can see again, you know, sort of stylistically, this feels more urban, this feels a little bit more, you know, down home, country, rural. This is sort of a transitional, sort of modern meets farmhouse kind of thing going on. And there's a million ways you can design these things, but here's a small mixed-use building. And so here you have a corner store or a coffee shop or something. Here's the corner market with apartments above. You could have more stories. These happen to have just one sort of apartments above. Now, that said, it's difficult for a developer to make this work financially. You know, luckily the cost of land here isn't through the roof yet, like some of the surrounding communities. So it's not as hard to not have to do so many stories, but you know, this is it's a very special building type because you start to make these neighborhood scale centers with these things, which is great. So we'll also have, oh, and by the way, single family house too is a type, right? I figured you guys know what that looks like, so I didn't put a slide in here trying to get to the Q&A. So don't think that we're not having single family in the future, right? Open space types, we talked about that. We'll have very specific standards, parks, greens, plazas, greenways, all of those types of things will be in it. Signage standards that are appropriate to the rural and small town context. So one of the things that I see a lot of times when you go to a place that does have small town charm, it's like they have the most amazing sign designers in the world, right? How do they all find this small town? And there's somebody who knows how to make these great signs. And then other places we go, it's like they have the catalog, you know, for, you know, signs.com or whatever, and you just order it, and it's the plastic and the lights inside, and it's like it could be on the highway, it could be in a strip mall. Here it is in our village, and no matter how hard we try to make this building look great and have small town charm, we've got this sort of hideous sign on there that just takes away from everything. So we'll have appropriate sign types as well. So then we will begin to create the final document. And so we've begun, we've got a draft cover here. So let's talk about character districts. So we've moved away from use, right, as the most important thing. We've been trying to listen to what you've been saying. And so we've created these drawings that you're about to see specifically for all of you know, what we've heard, right? So if you hate them, we need to know that too. Hopefully you'll love them like we can. So we talked about this idea of the continuum from the most rural area, natural area, to rural, to suburban, sub-urban, to general village, and moving on. So everything has its place. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, right? That's key, because we know that not everyone in Nolensville wants the same thing. So we want to make sure that everyone gets what they want, but we're not going to preclude other people from having what they want in the process. Is kind of the idea. So here's CD1, nature, natural. Does that look familiar? Okay, so here, this is, I literally took this picture and then our teacher, I was like, you can't beat that. This is your creek. This is a mythical group of science class studying natural crayfish. So you think like, oh, I've got one here. I didn't know if or not. So I just, yeah. So the kids are all looking from a distance. Here is a CD2 rural district. That's good. And so what you see is here, there's kind of a farmhouse, right, with a little back barn and some, you know, on this sort of big lot here, and the road comes around. Then there's like a larger lot, 1 acre subdivision in the distance, right next to it. But we've incorporated all the things that you all tell us you like. We've trees and the sort of the picket fence and the bioswale for sustainable stormwater. And we made a this probably owns the creek. It's a tributary that goes to it, and we wanted to make sure we had featured that a little bridge there you go over. And so that's kind of what you can expect in the CD2 rural. Okay, so we're going from the edge more towards the center. So you have plenty of existing neighborhoods that are already built. So they fit more in the CD3L, suburban large lot. So we've kind of taken the SR and SR1 and lumped them into this district. So for the idea is to change them or transform them, sort of stays how it is. And we were looking at, I don't know if we ever finished figuring out the number, but looking at what percentage of the land area is currently in conventional suburban neighborhoods. And it's a pretty good amount when you start to look at it. So there's a lot of that. And I don't know if this will be used for new neighborhoods or not, but you'll have what you have. So here's the CD3 Suburban. Right, so this feels a little bit more village-esque. You can start to see the sidewalks and the street trees, and the houses are a little bit closer, and people are talking to each other across here and doing all the things that you do in a neighborhood. This is a fun one. We got excited about this. So this is the CD4 Historic Village. So we've got its own district. And I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to skip past this because I got a before and after. This actually has some transformational aspects, so stay tuned. But the idea is to keep the character like it is, right? Infill a little here and there, really do some things that aren't done yet to make it even more special and more exciting and feature it even more. And as it ties in with new village development. So here's the CD4, the suburban village. This is an interesting zone. This is actually the most interesting zone in a lot of ways, and here's why. What you can see in this image, this is a moment, of course, got your creek there, and no crawfish, but single family detached house, multi-family apartment house, mixed use neighborhood scale corner store, live work, and row houses in the park, all in this one moment, around this one civic space, right? And so I've been telling you all along that these things can go together. Not just go together, but be awesome together. Because imagine if this was only detached single family houses, not bad, right? It's a nice park and all of that. Imagine if we're only townhouses, okay? And so as you bring them all together, all of a sudden it starts becoming something much more than the sum of each of the parts. So we are looking at, do you need any regional retail commercial stuff, right? Right now you don't have big box, and people ask us about it. This is a renewal we've done before. This is a reuse, but here's sort of the big box. But the idea is that along the highway, you have buildings pulled up to the street. They're a little bit, pedestrian focused, but also auto oriented. So you turn in here, the parking is still hidden behind, community gardens and, greenways and all sorts of things. There's a pharmacy with a drive-through in the back and some of these things. So we're not sure if you guys need this or not yet, but because we classes about, well, for economic purposes, do we need some big box? What do we do? So I just wanted to share this with you all. So here's CD5 Urban Center. So this is a good one. I like this a lot. So what you can see here is there's a lot going on, but it's really a mixed use environment, right? Mixed use. You have at the end of the street some live work buildings. Here you have commercial on the ground floor with apartments above. This building, if you're counting, is 3.5 stories. This building here is 4 stories. 4 stories is something y'all talk a lot about, and do we like it or not? So that's a 4-story building there. You can imagine this building, even with another story, probably be pretty nice looking. But we've got our sustainable stormwater tree wells here. We've got our plaza, civic space type. We have lots of glazing percentage on some of the windows and glazing. You have people sitting out here, hanging out, very active environment. Now, very different than the historic village. But because they're so close in proximity, you actually can have them support each other. And so that's one of the things that we're really excited about as well. So keep this in mind as y'all are thinking about the future of the more urban parts of the town. When you start to see it looking like this, I don't know, maybe y'all can start saying, hey, could we go 5 stories? I don't know. Like, I don't want to get run out of the room. So just throwing it out there, right? But it's a little different. Like this stuff, I don't know. Does anybody think this looks like an apartment complex? Yeah, good. Perfect. All right. So, sorry. Little things, right? We hear you. Dark sky, light picture here. So, I mean, just all the on these guys here. So there's probably more stuff. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, I wish I could zoom in. Can you see that? Whole hall. This is Martin's. So, I don't know. You're like at 3 different locations right now. So I got the Martin's barbecue there. The right logo and everything. So we get into this stuff. So. Light industrial, right? So light industrial doesn't have to just be a wasteland. It can actually be really cool. And you all happen to already be going to your industrial areas and hanging out and going to the brewery and those sorts of things. So this is a model to show how you can have sort of larger scale industrial mixed in and have great places and have walkability. And imagine if you work here or you have a larger factory, and somebody comes out and they're gonna hang out and eat lunch out here. Maybe there's a soccer field right there they can play on their lunch hour or whatever. So even industrial can be cool. And civic zones, right? So, as I said, parks, and so there's another zoning district that's a civic zone as well. So we did a few demonstration areas to, the character obviously is the most important part, but how does this translate to development? So I wanted to show a couple of things, 3 different areas. We looked at this area here and created a traditional neighborhood development. It's about 90+ acres or so, and it's pretty close into the core, and wanted to see what that's about. And then we have what we're calling East Village. Everybody's focused on the triangle so much, and a little bit here at the intersection, but not so much over here. So we wanted to take a look at that, and then in the historic area as well. So here is the T&D, traditional neighborhood development area before. And so you see there's existing neighborhoods, the roads stubbed in, there's all these existing vegetation and there's some slope and topography and hydrology. And so here you start to see how you can put some of these neighborhoods in where you save the hydrology, the existing tree rows through here, you connect in the streets, connect in the great neighborhood centers with the park, a large area here. You actually can start to face the nature rather than backing up to it. And you have a multitude of lot sizes. So you have large lots at the edge. So as you drive down the road here, you still sort of have that the country crust, if you will, along the crust around the edge. And then as you come in, you have sort of large lots and medium lots and small lots and row houses and all of the things there, and even a little piece down here that ties in and connects it all together. And then there's this really interesting knoll here, this long, tempting driveway. So we showed like some little how to do, if you're going to do anything on the slopes, maybe do some like cool tree houses, very small footprint that really work and they're nestled in the trees, and cut down. If you're going to cut down any trees, it's like just the footprint of the building. And some developers actually do that, believe it or not. They don't have to just cut all the trees down and grade it all. So, and so here's the view, right? So I zoomed in a minute ago. Oh, no. There we go.
Yeah, that's well done.
I don't know if you all give presentations or not, but yeah, so here we go. I'm going to go fast. All right, so this is that green space into that. This is this space here. looking this way, right? So I actually built the 3D model of it so you can see. So within this view, you have multifamily here, you have larger single family kind of coming in from the main road is here. You have the row houses, the green space, the hydrology, the little stream tributary saved there, the trail, we've added a trail along here. This is a large single family house, smaller cottages here. Again, they all can actually see each other from here, and okay, it's a great place. You have on-street parking. We've shown little speckles here show pervious paving so the water can infiltrate through. This little tiny pocket parks, and I actually told our renderer to do a little sustainable stormwater pond and feature kind of wetland in here. He didn't get to that. I'll have to have a talk with him. So precedent images, right? So this is a new neighborhood. This is here you see the streams, saved, trees and the parks and the larger houses and smaller houses, and working with the slope and the topography and all these really cool features, and just quite a neighborly place to live. Right? Looking at the historic village. Okay, so this place is very special and very delicate, right? And so if you get too heavy-handed in here and you're not careful, you're going to goof it all up. So that's my warning to you as I'll show you how we did a lot of things in here. But we noticed some really cool features about it. Obviously, the number one thing with the creek coming through here in the proximity of the creek. And I talked a lot about how Leaper's Fork is really a great example of how to have a sort of rural experience of the hamlet. But the thing you have over Leaper's Fork is their creek is about a 30-foot drop down from the back of these buildings. So it's like treacherous. You all can nicely walk out the back and walk right in, go to science class. And so you have also a lot of kind of random open patches of things. You have a parking sort of strewn around in a random way, it's not consolidated in any way. And you have the other thing that I was really excited about was the bridge and the trail. And then when I learned that you all are already coming over here, and that's where you hang out on Friday and Saturday night, the brewery and the distillery and all the things. I said, well, goodness, if you're already here, why not be here too, right? And so how do we really connect these and feature them and make them also work together? So you have like that kind of industrial village that I showed you in that character district, and you have the historic village, and then you have the new village, and also close. This is very, very rare. You all were very forward thinking as you were designing the town. I know you meant to do all of these things, right? So, however, it all works out. So I'm going to show you this and quit stalling. Okay, so before, so here's like the feet, right? So all these are the existing buildings, the light pink ones. And what I am showing you, and then amongst them are new buildings, new civic spaces, the new streetscape, consolidated parking that actually is clear and identifiable where it is, and it's not just kind of random around. Obviously, these things take coordination to make happen, right? But because you all are forward thinking and are in love with your village, as you should be, you'll be able to do all of these things, I know. So just because I wanted to demonstrate it as well, these are actually some of those multifamily apartment houses. So we have a little bit of multifamily here. The yellow orange buildings are live work. So here you see we actually turned 3 sideways, broadside to the street, because we needed enough room to get 60 feet across for 2 vacant parking lot to go in there. We loved what you were already doing here with Pork Belly. So we actually see the road network connects through. And so now, remember we talked about that secondary network of streets all the time? We're starting to create it and define it through this process. Even here, you kind of have the rear lane, rear alley that works your way through there. This is where your parking lot is right now. And so because we consolidated the parking and did what we did and made a lot more, we actually have this big parking lot here now as well. that now is available for a park. Now, I know you just did all the things you did to it, so bear with me, this is the future vision, right? And so you have this nice civic space that happens to be right at the termination of the bridge and sort of the trail experience. So you're drawing people into your trail network. Here we have these little, we call artist shanties, kind of random little kiosk things that are floodable, because we know we're in the flood area here. Very lightweight though. And then here actually could even be some, a couple of tiny houses. The floodplain comes up, I think, like this. So these two may be out, but you could even put a couple of residential single family houses in there. So you have like kind of the keepers of the village, you know, people who are kind of keeping their eyes on, making sure everything's going okay. And then we noticed that there's this giant green field here next to the church with a wonderful view of the church's parking lot. And so we thought, well, what if that actually became a park, a proper park? And because churches use their parking on Sunday and Wednesday, sometimes in between also, but what if that became part of your parking experience for the village? And so you could park here in church, you know, makes it available. And so you come through, there's no parking in these areas. You come through here, you can park there. You can come around, park there. I mean, we have parking in all these different locations, but we've shown a row of food trucks there at the end. So the food trucks kind of define that open space. I know you guys are thinking about food trucks somewhere else. So that wherever it goes, food trucks are kind of really cool to have as part of your downtown village experience. And then I'll show you in a minute. Remember these three buildings. There's a place down in the Panhandle of Florida called Black Bear. What is it, like a bakery or something like that? And there's like these little buildings, and they're connected, and they're the same building. But there's like a deck between them, a little bistro light strung, and then there's a porch. The porches all connect, and so it's this really kind of cool experience. But they're elevated, they're raised up a little bit, and so that's something you could do. And then showing a park here, and then this is I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we've moved the parking lot back. I know that's kind of new too, but we have shown a building here. We're calling it a sort of a bed and breakfast or an inn, so you can have like a downtown inn, and then. There's probably so many things I'm missing. Oh, and then I don't know what's going on here, but it seemed like it'd be a great spot for a trailhead parking lot slash historic village parking. So here's a little trailhead building. You park here, you walk across, and now you never have to wonder where parking is in the village. So lots there. I'm sure anybody who has paid any attention to the village can tell me a million things that are totally unrealistic and won't work. But that's part of it. That's how we count on the locals. And really, the point of this isn't to say go do this plan, right? It's just to show you all different concepts, how to do something, how to make a destination, how to tie it all together. But this one was more just kind of like our gift to you guys, and let's have these plans with the village too, to focus on the other areas more than this one. Here we go. So here it is today, right? I took the picture from the most scenic part of your historic village. And again, when we draw these before and afters, we're not saying that anything that's here that is useful and you love shouldn't be here, but maybe one day it won't be. Some of the things that are in your village aren't necessarily village-esque. Some of the buildings aren't what you would necessarily call contributing to the character and charm, even though the things in them are great. So here it is now, and here it is possibly in the future. So the Southern Comfort, the diner, is now on the ground floor of this mixed-use building. And this is an existing building, Here's your Napa or whatever that place is. And so we've got the roll-up doors, and it's now an adaptive reuse, and some cool bistro in there, and the dining outdoors, and your the horse trough planter, all kinds of cool stuff in there. And then there's some of the artist shanties in the back, and your dark sky lighting, your brick sidewalks, and your pervious parking lanes. And I know you guys have worked on a streetscape project here, and so we've tried to incorporate some of these. We don't mean to muddy the water. This may be one of the options, I don't know. And then here's the things that I love to focus on. Look at this. So
fire pit, and we sort of kept the pedestrians and everybody safe here with the logs, and these are straight out of legal sport. They do these things all the time. There's people actually sitting here, kind of looking out over the road. Could you imagine doing that today? Probably not. But here's where the seats are. Here we've got a smoker with the logs piled up and the smoke billowing up, and I mean, picket fences all around. You know, in this space between these buildings. You know, because this is one of these linear kind of public spaces that, you know, the village, if you come here with your kids, you always say, well, the kids are going to run out of the street. So we actually made this sort of a park here with the little fence. We can have a little gate, and so the kids can play there. You don't have to worry about them running out in the middle of the road, even though it'll be very slow and very safe when the, you know, transformation occurs, bike lanes. So anyway, we had some fun with this, and it's great. So here's some inspiration. I don't know, I can't remember where this place is. I found this a while ago, and I just like, whoa, this is so cool. Pennsylvania, maybe. Oh, here's of course, this is actually in for sport. So gravel, fresh gravel around, you know, like when you're thinking about, oh, you know, we're going to need parking, you know, don't immediately think you got to do asphalt, right? One, because it's impervious, and two, that small town charm and character. The more you can hear things like gravel crunching under your tires as you're and walking in it, and like it really makes a big difference. So, and then these random little buildings, like when you look at the downtown village, sort of village plan, you're like, what's this little random square building? Well, it's the turquoise shop in Leaper Sport, apparently, you know, or it's the whatever, you know. So it's, you wouldn't believe the number of things people put in these little spots. And that's what makes it so good. So this is cool. Artist shanties, this is what I was talking about before. So you can imagine these are totally floodable and, you know, no big deal. You know, you open the doors and you hang merchandise on them, and at night you can shut them. And, you know, we did a version of these actually that had these slats in it, and so you actually let the light on and act like a Chinese lantern, kind of glowing, sort of this experience there. So all kinds of cool things. Oh, here's that black bear, right? So between each of those buildings, you see they have tables and awnings and bistro lights, and then the porches are connected, and just really cool. Here, these are just little, you know, not expensive buildings, right? But they're, you know, it's a little more modern maybe than you guys are. I don't know, but who knows? Oh, floodable buildings. This is an interesting one, right? So this is a market building in England, and, you know, obviously the ground floor is totally floodable. You know, it's not going to cause any issues, and people live above. Here, back going all the way back, this is the fish market in Venice, and it is flooded most of the time. You know, it happens a lot, but they're ready for it, and they knew how high they needed to go. So if you're considering things, you know, if you're going to ever don't do anything in floodplains, some people say it's okay to, you know, if you're going to do it, make it count. Like, these are cool, you know, so just think about that. And then East Village. So here we have taken some liberties again, as we tend to do. And I know you all have been recently discussing the grocery store up in the corner here. And so we, again, take off the table for a moment that you all recently had a discussion about that. And the point of this discussion now is to look at how having a long-term vision for the future, a plan for the future, and zoning that supports it can allow you to do things that are really, you know, much greater than if you think about and design your village one development at a time, right? So here it is now. Here's the nursery, and I understand now as we're sort of growing this, there's actually, you know, plan for this. So a lot has already come forward. So again, I think horses out of the barn for most of the stuff, but just wanted to share some thoughts with y'all. So you have people have talked about the possibility of, you know, having the greenway and large parks and those sorts of things, and that's something a great idea. And so here is what you could do over here. So you can see that the grocery store that's proposed is kind of right here, and it's getting this awesome view across the long view across the floodplain at the back of the grocery store, which is, you not ideal, right? And so what I wanted to show was, again, assuming that you have to have lots of parking and all of those things, here's what you do. So we actually, the property line comes here. And so we bump this out. So we said now, okay, well, you got more parking here, scooch this down. We added some multifamily, some single family. So that's what you see you come across. We moved the building over. There's some liner buildings. So this is actually different commercial mixed use on the edge. There's some other liners here. We just left what they had there. And then coming through here, you start to see these different colors. So purple is the apartment house typology, orange is live work, and the maroon is single family detached, yellow is townhouses. And so you can see as you come in, we left these houses where they are, set back from the street. This is kind of like that Tv3 experience. But then just behind them, we let them carve off the back of their lot if they wanted to. They can make some lots here, larger lots. They're facing out into the floodplain, trails coming through. We have, as you move into the center, you remember that CD4 image I showed you with the row houses, the single family houses, the mixed use building and apartments. That's that spot right there. And so you can see how it all comes together. There's a cottage court on one end. Our townhouses facing into this green space. There's an apartment building that's two-sided. One side faces this green, the other side faces this green. This is a tiny house cottage court here. We have parking lots in the rear for these things. And the thing that's great about this is that secondary network. Again, secondary street network. So you actually could avoid this intersection if you wanted to. But the streets are designed, and you saw the rendering. No one's going to feel comfortable driving fast through there if the road is designed correctly, the buildings are placed correctly. And so you have this going on. And then one day, this can actually be infilled. So you notice these are set up still as blocks, right? And so you could infill around these. And so today you may have a medium/big box, and in the future you have something different. Now, we get to actually look at this in detail down the road, and we won't be able to take for granted that we can do something different with this property, do something different with this property and all of that. So we'll have to put the cards where the dealt when we actually study it. But if you imagine that, 10 years ago or whenever, you had a grand vision for this. And so what I wanted to do is actually stay away from the triangle, because that's where all the focus is given, and look at sort of this side. But you can see I couldn't resist this corner and the intersection, because that becomes one of the most important parts of what you're doing, right? And so how do you, what happened here is, at least it's pulled up to the street and those sorts of things. And maybe one day it's going to be so great, somebody will actually, if you let them, do some stories above, right? And so you can actually have some more liveliness going on in there. This is a cemetery, so we have this building kind of facing the street, facing across the cemetery, using that as an open space. Then kind of pulled back here from the corner, made a civic space here, a plaza or something. And then you can imagine that, something similar starts happening on this side of the road as well. Or maybe even, more dense, I don't know. It just depends on where you guys want to go. But again, this is to illustrate in the same way that traditional neighborhood development drawing did, how you mix these different things together in a plan. So it's not one size fits all. It's not a complex. It's not a subdivision. It's a town. And that's really where you guys are all trying to go, from what I can tell. And so I think the real definition will come in the future as we determine, how much of the purple probably is going to be a hot topic, if that's multifamily, and how much of the mixed use and how tall. And so putting some meat on those bones, but understanding how these things all work together. And then you notice here, these buildings are all facing onto the open space. They're not backing up to it, right? The idea that people back up to this amazing amenity just boggles my mind. And not only do you back up to it, you might still be able to go back there and there's a trail. No one really feels great about being back there. You're behind someone's building, but if you're in front of it, you're okay with it. And especially if it's like a backup house of a big box, right? That's not the experience anyone wants, okay? So these folks here, you say, well, I wouldn't want to live there. Well, good, don't, right? But somebody will, you know, somebody will say, well, I'll live right there and I'll be happy to be your lifer building and cover up the back of that grocery store and listen to it every time they need to come, you know, do the dumpsters and the big trucks come in and beep, beep, beep. Some people are okay with that. I've met people in this room who moved here from New York and other places where it may be hard for you to sleep around here because it's just crickets chirping, right? So, and this is that view again, right? That core area, the most intense where you might be. So here's some things about suburban placemaking. Right, I hate to end on this, but if you guys decide you do need to do these sort of big box and in-box things, so this is what you normally get. So I just want to introduce the idea of time to you, right? Time and patience. Because it's not often that a community like you all has the forethought to think about these things in advance. And so normally we're getting there after the fact, as I keep telling you all, and we're showing them how to fix the things that they goofed up, right? And so y'all are, we're going to pretend this is new development, right? And so they could start with this, but then you could go with this, right? And so now you see what happened there. So you went from that, now you got that. So you've got some mixed use, got a little main street that leads up to the entrance of the store there. Oh, look at that. See, just infill there amongst these buildings. Put some liner on here. So now you've actually got a little plaza outside, and this is turning the corner. And you go, well, what about all the parking? What are we gonna do? And so, okay, so one day you get, you know, you're gonna need parking structures, maybe, I don't know. This is just so you should know we're thinking these things through. But the parking is in the rear, right? And it's all lined by buildings, and these are great streetscapes. One thing you notice here too is, you probably didn't notice this. So this is a gas station. This is what we call gas backwards, right? So here's the convenience store part of it. Here's the pumps in the back. So you come in and you go through like that. So the pumps don't want to be in the front. That's a no-no. So then maybe one day we hear about this. Maybe big box isn't a thing anymore, right? And maybe we have all this land available, and there goes the big box. And so now you have some really nice village going on there. And what you probably missed too. So we started off with this here, and the parking all around it, and we circulate around the building and all that, and here's the highway. Watch what happens along here. So now we have a multi-way boulevard. So this is a slip lane here. So this is a little side road, and this is where the main traffic flows through here. This is for the traffic that wants to actually have on-street parking in front of these on the big highway. You guys don't have much of a highway, so you're okay, but some places do. And so here's what the gas station, pumps in the back, come through, go out there, no problem. Here's a bank. They have those anymore. Pharmacy, you can't even see it, but the drive-through back there in the back. So this is a nearby example that you can go look at. So if you've been to West Haven, we've talked a lot about that. Everybody seems to know there's a grocery store there. But when we talk about it, people seem to not realize that you don't know there's a grocery store there until you explore a little bit, because here's the fire station, this is the main road in, Highway 96 is here, main road in. Here's the dry cleaners, the Chinese restaurant, the wine shop, the hairdressers, covering up this giant parking lot for the grocery store, right? And so they got all their needs met. But then here you have townhouses, you have apartments above, ground floor, commercial space, there's more townhouses, there's single family houses, all within here. And when we set this up originally, we again set it up. So if you ever drive down the street, you'll notice there's sidewalks and on-street parking and street trees. It's this proper streetscape, and one day you can easily infill along here. And so you can have what I just showed you in the diagram earlier. And so you can have kind of all of these things. And the grocery store doesn't care at all that no one can see them, just for what it's worth. So timelines and next steps. If you haven't already, go online and watch the videos. If you missed any meetings, if you haven't done the mapping exercise, go do that. We are here for the Planet Palooza. Once we get feedback, we will then start drafting the ordinance, the new zoning ordinance. We will have a public draft open house coming up in spring. And then we will start to prepare the final document that will be out in the summer, and you guys will rapidly adopt it without any controversy or discussion, because we have this wonderful process and everyone is on board and the vision is now cast. And the reason I say that is nobody's waiting, no developer's waiting on you guys to decide what you want to do. They're going to keep coming, right? And so in the meantime, while you guys are doing whatever you do, they're just keep coming, and you'll keep getting PDs, and then you'll have to all decide, like, okay, well, is this better than this, or is that better than that, or whatever. So the new zoning ordinance will be written so that you don't have to have PDs anymore. That's a new, I know kind of a new thing. You guys have PDs, so you had your PUDs before. But we want to make sure that we've got it all dialed in, it's all set up correctly. The vision is cast, because we can write a zoning ordinance that will give you the things that I've been showing you here in these images without much effort, without any discussion and debate. You can simply just go to the meet the standards, check, go. So hopefully we'll get you guys there in the future. So, home streams, fears, aspirations, concerns, who did I scare to death? Who I saw, and let's chat. How do we do? Listen. Hands back. Hold on, we got the mic. We want all the people. Oh, yeah. Yes.
I really love that you've incorporated so many different components of feedback that we've all been hearing for so long. I think it's a great way to have the majority of those key components of what they want in different places throughout the town. So I think that's phenomenal.
I just want to say quickly for the guy that hadn't been here all week. Yeah, that's a place I want to live in. That's beautiful. I came in August and figured maybe I would just wait and see what the kind of the product was, not bias myself towards the discussion. And it's gorgeous. Big fans of it. Hold on.
Awesome, thanks. One right there.
Yes, I'm just reiterating what we said, that I love your vision. It looks like a place I would want to fight with my kids and say all day. I love that it's more of a town center where the people would want to come together and spend time. So I really appreciate your vision. I love all that, all the work you've done.
Thank you. Well, and hopefully it's y'all's vision, right? We're just the conduits, we're the tools to get your vision out on paper. And also, by the way, all those people in the back who are sitting back there looking tired, those are all them too. So I can't take all the credit. Who else?
I also like the ability you put together and the flexibility pieces as well. I think that's great, especially all behind where our diner is right now. I think you set that space and keep it off site. I'm still a person that's a little not four-story person, but to keep that there behind everything is a nice idea as well. I also like the beginning you said about, the CE2 being the outside perimeter of our town and keeping that rural, keeping that the large lots and things of that nature, which I know people are willing to say that. But anyway.
Not everybody.
Well, not everybody. But it really turned out nice, and I think you did listen. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back behind you.
Hey, so one thing that I noticed that you didn't draw.
Oh, no.
You didn't draw like a quarter-mile driveways and garage doors. I don't know what was the mission,
Yeah.
but that's probably
That's part.
that's probably the nice thing that about this is that instead of being cookie cutter USA, where we sell something suburban with lot size minimums that make it hard to make money and everybody's just built for the minimum, the product is what's the same. Now, if we open up the zoning to allow for different components to be mixed in together, now you have uniqueness. So now it's no longer, oh, it's no longer a suburb of Nashville. Now it's like, hey, like the new West Haven is opening up in Nolensville, and very unique and nothing like the same. And I think that's a big part for me. My favorite aspect of that is that nothing that you showed looked like anywhere. I couldn't like close my eyes like, oh, it kind of looks like Bang Creek, because nothing you showed looked like Bang Creek, because we already have a Bang Creek. So that was my favorite part. I love the flexibility. I love just the uniqueness of it, and obviously the preservation of the features and making sure that we do get green space that's usable, not just a requirement to put on your TV before you hit a mark. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, enjoyed your presentation. We'll have zoning and we'll have a vision. What's your recommendation for how we find developers who are capable of designing and building the vision that we want? I assume there's going to be more than one developer, and we want to be able to have them, as we go along, match. So what do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. So having all of this stuff that I just showed will help you so much. You'll be able to go out and market this place. You'll say, you know, hey, are you a developer who does mixed use villages? Are you a developer who doesn't do cookie cutter? Are you? We are a town that you might not have looked at before, but we're actually head and shoulders above other places because we've got the vision in place. We have the zoning in place, and we're going to actually make it easy for you because we want what you have to offer. Because believe it or not, the reason we're having to update the zoning is to make you be able to do that sort of thing without a PDD. You can't do it right now without a PD. And that is the case in most cities and towns. And many of them actively, you know, they're just so focused. I mean, if I did this presentation in Brentwood, they would lose their mind, right? And so they like 1 acre zoning, and that's where they're at. And they'll come around at some point. But I think you all will be ahead of the curve, even though we redid the Franklin zoning ordinance recently, for instance, and are doing Columbia. There are things like if you pick up one of our zoning ordinances, because we've listened, there are many things in the zoning ordinance that we write that I can tell you we don't recommend. They just ended up in there because that's the direction that the town wanted to go, and they couldn't depart from this thing or that thing that they were in love with, and so we say, that's a shame. So the more pure you guys can let us write this zoning ordinance, the better result you're going to have, because you're going to make the path of least resistance the path for the future that you've asked for.
Does that suggest that some developers will see this and let me repeat it. Does that suggest that some developers will see these zoning ordinances and recognize this is not their thing, that they can't do it? So you were saying that we would go to developers and say, can you do this? But I think that there are developers out there today who are quite capable of doing that. And is it part of your role to help us identify those developers?
It's not, but because it's not, well, you said a lot of things there, so I'll start with them in a moment. So yes, some developers will see this and go, that's not for me, not because they can't do it, because they don't want to do it, because it takes more forethought, it takes effort and care and passion about your project. And a lot of developers know how to make money without doing any of those things. They can just crank it out, right? And so good for them. Which will also, you know, you guys say, well, we want to grow in a smart way. We want to grow carefully and thoughtfully. And so that actually happens as a result of having sort of more rigorous standards, right? And so then you, what was the last part of your question? Oh yeah, so no, it's not part of our job to help you find them, but because I hope you can tell, like, we get into this stuff and we care about the places we're working. Like, I'm on the phone calling developers just because, like, I see you guys heading in a particular direction, and, you know, I'm saying, stay tuned is what I'm saying, because I don't know how this will turn out, right? You all are very passionate here. And so I say, stay tuned and see what happens in Nolensville. We're writing the zoning ordinance, and you know what we do. And if all turns out like the types of developments you like to develop, this is the place to do it, because not only are you all setting forth this vision, but also the market is interested in you, right? So there's plenty of places we work that are like no chance, because like they'll get there one day. It's like one you put I call it the 100-year plan, right? But you all are really trying to capture people who are already you're in their sights. So yes.
I've heard of awesome presentation, and definitely love where we're at so far. One of the concerns I hear a lot is if we start allowing residential in the, you know, especially the historic districts, but the village, then that's all we're gonna get. We're not going to get a mix of commercial spaces, but only mixed-use buildings. So is there gonna be a mechanism for balancing that in the code?
Yeah, there's a number of ways we can do it. I mean, one is based on building type, so we can do it with that. We can also, you know, some places like developers will try to misuse the mixed-use zoning district, and they'll say, well, I know the intent is to be mixed use, so I'm going to put a coffee shop in the corner of, you know, 700 units of multifamily, and now I've got a mixed use project, right? And so, you know, the city's like, no, that's not right. And it's just you're leasing an office and your gym doesn't count either. Well, that doesn't count, but that's not the extent of it. So I think in Franklin, we actually put a percentage of commercial or a multitude of uses within certain districts. So there's ways we can do it. I'll tell you right now, though, the historic village is going to be the most difficult part because, like I said, it's so unique and so special. It's hard to write standards for quirkiness, right? And that's what it is, right? And so we're gonna try to see what we can do, but just stay tuned on that. We got to work that out for us.
One other question. Do you think there's any opportunity for small pockets of commercial not in the village? So the first area that you showed, kind of the three that you went through, I've actually thought about that parcel being a good collector road that connects the two major roads, and along that fronted by commercial, and then transitioning out into the neighborhoods to the east and west would be some residential. And to me, if we don't put everything right on Nolensville Road, it keeps track of on Nolensville Road. Especially Sunset has the big walking trail already. It's the, you know, the nice big trail that connects all those neighborhoods to Nolensville Road. Well, that would be on that trail. So like that area to me is a good candidate for a pocket of commercial kind of service in those neighborhoods. So that's something that could come out of this process.
For sure, yeah, that CD4 district, you know, like if you look at West Haven, for instance, I'll just keep using as an example, but you know, you have the village center in West Haven, this would be 4, right? And so then beyond that, it's 4 for a little while, but there's some commercial, and then it transitions to row house and the multifamily side of things, and then it moves into the 3. And it was just dependent upon the market, right? And so that's when you want to allow for some of these mixed-use neighborhoods, it really, I mean, unless it's right next to an existing CD3L, that doesn't want to have the convenience of being able to walk to a cafe or something like that, they just only want to drive, then why not allow it where the market will have it, so.
I love how you can take the concepts and whatnot and have the software be able to make beautiful pictures and, to be able to see it comes alive. But one of the pictures was of the historic village, and I believe it had 1 car, maybe 2. And the before picture was like 48 cars.
Yeah.
And you, in one of the sessions, you talked about the possibility of having parallel-ish kind of roads and also road connector roads and that type of thing. Did I miss that in there, or is roads kind of not your purview in zoning?
No, it is, well, in some ways, no, it's not, but neither is drawing all of the buildings in between all the little things. And you know, so we, and I'm glad you mentioned this because there are two reasons why you didn't see a lot of cars in that after view. One is I wanted you to see all the streetscape features. So they're in the distance. If you're sitting in the front row, you would see there's one off in the distance coming, there's one parked on the side, and there was one that's just about to enter the view. You just couldn't see it, right? But the other reason is because we're counting on the big thoroughfare plan to create this parallel network of streets, and now the pressure on Nolensville Road has been relieved. And so you have the cars that are on other new streets that are yet to be named and built. And so I showed you some of the little pieces of them and some of the different areas we drew. But more than anything, it was, I wanted you to see all the streetscape features. That's a great point.
Several of the images showed the creek and its tributaries as real life attractions and ways to access them. Yet our stormwater regulations require so much buffer and 50 to 75 to 100 feet, depending on where it is. Will you all be assisting us with some different stormwater regulations that essentially comply, but allow us to be able to do things that provide access?
So we'll be working on that to some extent. We're going to be counting on Horse Witten as well to bring some of that to the table. Can you minimize this for a second there? I'll show you something that I forgot to mention. It's a very important point because the floodplain in the creek is so important. So here we go. All right. So right now, the floodplain goes along here. And then goes like this. And so this is something I want you all to consider. Because we were trying to accomplish the goal, an important goal of screening the back of this, we actually infringed upon the floodplain right here. But you notice right here, we pulled back from it. And so we actually kind of gave way. And so we offset what we did. So those are some of the things that y'all need to kind of think through as we go through the process. But I forgot to mention, and it was maybe one of the most important things in this whole drawing. So I think having everybody understand that the creek and the water and the floodplain are featured instead of feared. I think is maybe that's the tagline. But we'll get into that further in the process. All right, we have some at home anonymous attendee. So will there be a key available for the village before and after, so we know what buildings in the town is thinking of having? Yeah, so we'll put a little key on the side that'll say existing and different types, so that will be. May I join late? I joined late, so I may have missed it. I'm not seeing any type of bypass or any type of improvement to control the traffic. Yeah, so back to your point. The bypass is something that is, I've essentially talked all about the bypass, just in a different way, right? And so by having these multiple parallel roads that are running north-south and all, really, they're all the bypass. It's just broken up into different pieces instead of having one main road. And so as you think about bypasses and bypassing, think about what it does, what it could do. There have been so many towns, villages around the country who were just destroyed by bypass. So, man, this Main Street, sure, the hassle to get down and all these pedestrians and bikers and all of that. And so let's just go around. And so Franklin's in the middle of doing it. You know, they got Matt Hatcher and they built bit by bit, and now they're about to connect another piece, and maybe the last piece will never go because of the crazy hills and topography. But I worry, you know, if downtown Franklin were as strong as it is economically, such a destination, would it survive a bypass like that? I think that maybe there's not as many people who happen to go through a historic place and go, oh, look at that, I think I need a loaf of bread. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there, right? So there are some people who come through, and you guys are talking about the traffic that you have that's really coming from other places and going to other places and they're not stopping here. So yeah, sure, let's get those people going where they want to go, but those who come through, let's make a place that they can't help but stop. Not because of the traffic, but because it's so charming, right? You're one of there, so. Closer to the mic.
There were so many things I loved about what you presented, and the visuals of everything were very helpful to me. I loved what we could do with the creek. I have the same question that Victor has about realistic part of some of it. I'm still trying to marry, you managed to marry West Haven and Beaver Fork in the same picture, so I'm trying to put those together in my head. Tell me about, so when you zone like this, what people will ask me is, what are the implications for this on our population? So are we zoning for more people? Can you have this without automatically increasing the number? I know it will shape where people move, and you can shape where that goes, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just simply asking, what are the implications?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially in a place where there's concern about growth and you know, all of that. So, you answered it though. Where people go is really what we're determining, because you have a finite number of people who are interested in living here at any given time. And so the reason you have all of these farms and stuff that are not developed isn't because they couldn't be developed. It's that no one wanted to develop them yet, right? And so people are coming in some, and you know, there's this thing called absorption rate, right? And so that's how many units any given place can take in a year from the market of people who are interested in buying. And so there's a particular person who's interested in Nolansville. You know, its geography, its price point, its, you know, where it is region, all of those things. And so I think because, I mean, obviously some of the things we drew here are really exciting and really neat. You may be like more on people's radar screen, but it's really hard to overcome the forces of the market, right? And so I think that, you know, as we go, and especially as we look at where the different character districts go on the map, some areas that you see too, they'll stay the big lot, you know, subdivisions and things like you have if you want more of that. But you also will see that within the same, let's not call it a development or subdivision, same new neighborhood, you'll have some of the CD2 and then 3 and 4 maybe. And so all of those things can be combined into a place. And so I hope that we'll be able to actually conserve more, or in some ways slow down the pace at which you're gobbling up the landscape and the farmland and nature and all of those things. Because right now, the way you've developed thus far has been, except for in this sort of village, has been very inefficient and very land heavy. And so you have to be careful about it. But a lot of these things are more comprehensive planning questions, right? And so that's one recommendation I have for you all, is to very quickly get your comprehensive plan kind of up to speed. They need to sync up. And some of the questions that we typically don't answer in zoning would be answered in comprehensive planning, like population projections and growth, you know, the pace of growth and those sorts of things. And so, yes, right there.
Yes, thank you. And I too love the design concept that you've done, but I noticed you didn't mention anything along Sunset Road or north of Sunset Road in the district that we're in now, like the commercial district that's on the north side, all the development that's going on there. And hey, industrialized. So what is your vision for those places?
Well, I don't know, what do y'all do? Like, whether y'all want to have more of it, do you want it is, you want to keep doing what you're doing, do you want more drive-throughs and more buildings set back from the street, or do you want it to be more village-esque, right? And so that idea of the the one that I showed you is kind of, auto oriented, but still nice. I think that's probably where it goes, you know, at some point you all will be going, okay, well, how do we fix the stuff that we've done out here, right? And that's okay, you haven't done anything grievous, you know, it's just, that doesn't say small and charm. You did a great job when you designed the buildings, this is a great looking building, and so I think that we'll need y'all's input on that a little bit more, because a lot of places we work are much more protective of their auto-centric corridors and things, and you all haven't seemed to be so much, or maybe it's just because y'all are beat down by the traffic and know that that's part of the problem, but, I don't know yet, so stay tuned. Got two hands in the back there. Maybe they come.
I just wanted to make a comment on when people are asking about the green and the buffers, and yeah, that's gonna be a challenge to guys to weigh in on it. But if you can look at some good landscape architects, people who can really invigorate those buffers, you know, good native plans. I think, you know, there might be some wiggle room, so.
Yeah, well, and also too, I mean, the way that we think about when you do new development of any scale that's adjacent to sensitive habitat, actually that development can provide all sorts of functionality so that you're not counting on it all happening just in the buffer. You're actually, by the time the water gets there, it's all dealt with, it's clean, it's, you know, not going too fast, you're not erosion, all of that, and that can be incorporated into your sustainable stormwater techniques of the parks and biospheres and all. Yes.
So to follow up on the question around the northern part of Northville Road, do you have the ability to help guide us on when the time comes, which is probably pretty far out in the future, because some of those buildings are pretty new. But what should we be looking to do there? How do we retrofit when it's time? Can we retrofit that to really match this other vision? So that, you know, the more that we can have of this fantastic look and engagement, the better. And in the process of that, how do we protect the businesses that are already there as we do stuff like that? That would be my concern is, you know, if I'm a small business owner, I'm hearing all this, oh my goodness, if they're gonna redo my area, you know, what happens to me while that's happening? So what do you recommend for that?
Yeah, well, in some ways, it's actually hard because you're being modest when you're making your suburban auto-oriented corridors. You were actually restrained and you didn't do these gigantic big box cities of asphalt and all of that. That's easy to retrofit. But you all have these like small little, and the road does this and that. I mean, it's all kind of crazy. And so it's going to be a little harder to do. The thing that causes it to happen, there's two things that cause it to redevelop. One is that the buildings just wear out, and most suburban strip highway developments make it last about 20 years. Not very sustainable, by the way, but 20 years, and then it's time to do something different. And then the other is that the land becomes so valuable that it doesn't make sense to have that single story auto-oriented parking lot all around. I think of a lot. And so, as you can imagine, if you do some of the cool things that you've seen here, it becomes more desirable and the value of the property goes up in those areas. And so it'll be able to be redeveloped more quickly. But, you know, there's a couple of things you can do. You just, you know, put in place that zoning, like I said, that lets it be a little bit more auto-oriented, but still you're gonna follow the rules. And something as simple as, you know, just the Martins and these guys, I mean, pull the building up the street, simple, no big deal, right? And so then make sure the parking has, you know, sustainable stormwater features in it, so it's catching the water before it goes into the creek and all that. And so it's, you know, not rocket science, that's easier, but like the whole sonic area, that's a whole other thing. I don't know what to do. Microphone. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so I'm gonna take a very unscientific poll, all right? Show of hands, how many people liked a vast majority of the things that were presented in this, say 80–85%? Okay, how many people didn't like at least one thing in it?
Whoa, that's pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah. We can
Okay.
stop right there.
Sure. So I'm gonna be the interviewer here. I'm gonna give my thoughts on some stuff. Don't worry, I don't do it.
I'm not worried.
I'll give you some positive.
What I live for.
I'll give you some good positive feedback though. I love that you have a micro, I call it micro commercial with like little shops, and you don't even have to have like HVAC and plumbing in them. You know, just like a little door on it, people coming, and there's tons of people in Owensville that have, I guess, micro businesses, like they sell material or something like that, you know. That'd be a great place, or they have like a little boutique or something like that. It'd be great for those folks. It's almost like a miniature farmer's market, but it has walls on it. Let's see what else. The tiny houses, so I like the tiny houses, but I would worry about that becoming more like trailers. Since they're prefabricated, I would want to see something in the zone to make sure that they stay nice and cute, like you showed, and didn't become something that was a manufacturing.
By the way, they don't all have to show up on the bed of a truck. There's just one that did, but they can be built on site too.
Sure, my thing is, I want it to look good, you know, and I'm fine with people living in, if they want to be 500 square feet, I don't care. That's the how they want to live, not me, but you know, whatever. The multifamily stuff was a little, I guess, a little worrying for me. I get that you're possibly gonna have some of that, but I would want there to be some kind of protections in place, especially when you have like a mixed use, to make sure that that doesn't go to becoming strictly an apartment building. I would want it to stay where, because the idea behind mixed use is, it's a space, right? You have 4 walls, you have a door, you have plumbing, HVAC, and electric, and it's a space, and it can be anything in that space. It can be commercial, it can be residential, it can be industrial if you want to. So you can potentially have a 3-story building, on the top floor you have the resident, second story you have the industrial where they make a craft or something artisan, and on the bottom floor is their shop, and it's their shop. Or, you know, maybe it's a 3-story office building, or something like that. But I want to figure out a way to make sure that it doesn't, those buildings don't strictly go to residential, because then you do just have an apartment complex in an area. You know what I'm saying? And so I would hope there would be some way to put those kind of controls in place to keep that from getting out of control.
Well, I would still push back since you went there.
Okay.
Just kidding. So if you had that image that you saw in CD5 and it was 100% residential, it'd still be pretty awesome. Just saying, not an apartment complex. Now, so here, the reason I say that is the market wants what the market wants, right? And so in Burlington, Vermont, years ago, they had the idea that, well, we want to have a lot of commerce happening in our downtown, right? And so they said, well, we also want to have people living there. So let's make all the buildings have to have 50% residential and 50% commercial. And then came the recession. And they had lots of buildings that were very empty, very vacant, until they promptly changed the zoning rules to allow the market to do what it wanted to do. So I think that what you find is in these areas that are zoned this way, you want the buildings to be designed so that they are flexible. And let's say right now, and then again, without a market study and all that stuff, I don't know. Let's say right now, maybe you can get the corner where I showed the plaza and all that stuff. And that's like, I know there's more than that, but let's just pretend. All you can get is the corner. But there's a developer who will build the rest of the place. And one day commercial will come in. But so you want to make sure that the ground floor doesn't have residential ceiling heights, for instance, that it has the ability to have, you know, ADA accessible, you know, storefronts and things like that. And so you'll actually see developers who are, again, these ones you want to market to, who say, you know what, like, I want to see this awesome village center one day. I know the market's not here, I'm in the middle of nowhere. And so, you know, let me do something about that. So they'll actually design the building, and so they'll put in the structure, they'll put an ID across the entire front that will support the load of all the wall above. And you can pop in a storefront anytime you want. You know, right? So one of the reasons why buildings don't transform readily is because the cost is so expensive. So you imagine, you watch one of these fixer-up shows on TV and you go, oh no, you're gonna need a beam. That's a load-bearing wall. And so if you go ahead and put the beam in, you can pop it in and out. And then the other thing they do is they'll put a false floor in, because in an urban environment or urban village environment, you want the residential to be up from the street because you're so close, and it gives you a sense of privacy a little bit, so people are not looking eye to eye as they walk past you. And so they'll put actually a wooden floor system in that can be popped out easily, and when it's popped out, now all of a sudden you've got commercial height, ground floor. So there's some things you can do like that if you don't want to tinker with the market in the zoning. So you can do it either way, but just be careful.
Sure, and one last thing, and I'll end my way, I promise. Your vision for the historic district is perfect. That is exactly what needs to happen here. When I ran and lost last year, when folks talk to me about how do you revitalize the historic district, that's like the buzz question right here. Everybody's been talking about how to do that for 15, 20 years. How do we revitalize the historic district? Well, you put people there.
Yeah.
You put people there and wow, they'll go to the stores. It's funny how that works. Anyway.
You people drive slow.
Yeah. Yes, true. Great job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll go again with like more technical preferences, because somebody mentioned the north side of town, which we do have on the north side of the town. So some of the technical preferences that I have would be, I know, for example, now in our existing zoning, our estate residential doesn't require you to bury utility lines, doesn't require you to put sidewalks. Obviously, I'm not comfortable with living with 15,000 people and neighborhoods without sidewalks or buried utility lines. That should be a standard throughout all of them, though. Also, sidewalks, especially like the main sidewalks up of the major roads, they should never be 5 feet. Like that's not enough room. My friend's gonna blow my phone up right now. Crosswalks, you gotta do crosswalks as many of them as possibly can. One thing that I didn't think of that actually EJ brought up in our last meeting is our retention funds are like, we buffered a retention fund because we didn't want to look at the hole in the ground. If there is like a mechanism where we use the retention funds for like frisbee golf or dog parks, something that is like easily floodable and minimal cleanup afterwards, but just use that in a different way than just a hole in the ground that collects water. And then the big one for me is a pet peeve of mine is green space. It's unusable space that is just a check mark and a talking point for a developer when presenting. I feel like green space should either, it has to be an improvement on people's lives, not just, hey, we didn't mow this part down, so we get brownie points for that. And then I like up north, I prefer not to look at parking lots and ditches. Obviously, they have to go to me, they have to go out in the back. And if we can just revisit the parking, the parking size, the world is changing. Last year changed a lot of habits. And the more we grow, the more services like Uber and ride-sharing options we're gonna have. We don't need to overpark, because every time you overpark, you take space away that's valuable for 364 days later, because you parked your whole store for Thanksgiving or Black Friday. So I think that we do have to kind of, or you guys, I hope you guys kind of go in and look at some of the regional statistics, not necessarily national, but like regional statistics with parking and what's possible and how you can share parking with different uses to limit the effect of pavement.
Great, thanks. Got one back there and then coming up here to the front to you.
Subdivisions will still be built.
I mean, that is the mechanism by which people.
Yeah, I mean, is CE3L, is that the zone for subdivision primarily?
Yes. And it's intended to really focus on the 3L is more like the existing ones where people aren't looking to change them. The 3 itself would be, based on what I've heard from the community, would be what you would do if you were doing a single family detached exclusive neighborhood. I mean, only not exclusive, like exclusive. So
But is it likely in this new zoning that we would still be getting those kinds of projects and some of them would be built?
I
Or are we
mean,
talking about no more subdivisions?
I don't know. What do you want? You don't want more? Here's the difference. Like, here's the substantive difference between the 3 and the 3L. So the 3L is, maybe a little bit larger lot, right? The other thing is that they are, I think, exclusively currently front loaded, so street loaded, driveway, the garage door on the front of the house, maybe on the side if you're lucky. So that's not something that you would do in 3.
But let me try it again. If a developer comes in, is there a zone that they could satisfy which would allow them to build subdivision under the new zones?
Like the ones you have now. Yeah. So L, if we map it somewhere, right? Besides where you already have it, and that's gonna be a decision that you all have to make.
It's just, there's a lot of land here. Will some of that land still be available for people to build subdivisions?
Like I said, if you all say we want to have more CD3L, more of these conventional neighborhoods, then it gets mapped on new land, right? On land that isn't currently 3L.
So we could also zone it in a way that would not allow subdivisions.
Correct.
We still have that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
The reason I'm thinking about it a little bit is in terms of how long it takes to develop these mixed use properties, to make sure that we can, if we're balancing our ability to collect enough in the way of sales tax, et cetera, to be able to provide for the infrastructure needs, police, fire, et cetera. And that happens, can you keep up if you're still building subdivisions? And I'm not sure you're gonna be able to stop subdivisions, but is there a way to balance that?
Yeah. So one of the things that we tend to do in all places we work when we're writing comprehensive plans and zoning ordinances is to require that all new development be mixed product, as the developers say. So you have to have, not necessarily mixed use, because there isn't necessarily a market on every piece of property for commercial, but, you know, to Derek's point earlier, some yes, but not everyone. You may not want to require that everyone has to have a neighborhood center, but you allow them to have it. And so if you require mixed building types within a neighborhood, then you have now done away with the single family only housing. If you still have that, if you still want to do that, then the only difference that the builders will notice is that they can't put the garage in front, you know, in the same way. I mean, you can have it street loaded. You don't have to have an alley for every house. But if it's street loaded, the garage is set back so that you can park beyond the side of the front wall of your house and not see cars. So I don't know, I mean, but do we want more national builder conventional subdivisions in the house and in the town, or would you like to head in a different direction?
It's a kind of segues into my question, which was, if on the outskirts, as you get away from the urban core, but we don't like to use the word urban, but as you get away from our village core and you begin to have parcels that would want to normally be a traditional suburban type development, and we say, make it more like a West Haven in that it's going to be more dense, it's going to be more mixed use, there's going to be a town center for each one of those types of subdivisions that comes along. Do you notice, or do you have data that supports where people that live, say, West Haven, they don't exit their neighborhood that often because they have everything they really need right there? So there's a mini mart, there's a coffee shop, there's a grocery store. Not even a big grocery store needed, but just the normal things that people would need to go out and go to your urban core for, they don't need to anymore. Do you notice that? And is there data to support that when you build those types?
Yes, there is, actually, when the transportation engineers are working on a private development project like West Haven or any kind of a mixed use or mixed new neighborhood like that, they have what's called internal capture as one of the variables that they put in their calculations. That the internal capture assumes that there's a certain number of trips that you're capturing within your neighborhood that you wouldn't have to leave for. And so, and if you nationally accepted, data sets to say, here's the number you use. And so, you can look at it and basically say, okay, well, the average person that lives in a conventional suburban neighborhood subdivision, like we've been describing, makes 7.5 trips a day or something. I can remember. And if somebody lives in one of these neighborhoods, they make like 3 or something. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I think the transportation engineers who are working on the major thoroughfare plan, they understand this type of development, and they probably will have that number.
And if you do start building more of those on the outskirts, is there where do you draw the line to say, oh, that's great, we want that for those neighborhoods because that works from a traffic standpoint, but how do we not cannibalize our own village center and those businesses by putting too many businesses within suburban districts?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, for me, that's one of the reasons why I'm so focused on the historic village. Because no matter how cool of a new place we can design, somebody can build, it can't compete. Like West Haven will never keep people from going to Main Street, right? And you can't really walk there. You can bike, and they're making the multi-way use path between the two now, so it'll be even easier. But it's like 3 miles or something, and even those 3 miles, yes, you don't have to leave the neighborhood for anything if you don't have to go to work. You literally can never leave the neighborhood, but you want to, because there's places that are so cool, that are cooler than even the neighborhood center there. So feature your village and have it work symbiotically with all of these other places is the key.
And we have a vibrant enough village where people from other parts, and we have a lot of commuter traffic that does go through this town, they can actually support that village, and the locals can stay in their own neighborhoods, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. It's hard to, if you don't go and stay in one of these places, it's hard to believe that it actually works like this, and it's funny because that's the way all neighborhoods used to work, and we've kind of like forgotten that because we got so used to this rural mindset. So we're taking these lessons and the way that people used to live and applying them to modern things, and it really does work. It's great. Yeah, I think you almost forgot your question, didn't you?
So you just answered one of my questions with it, so thank you, I appreciate that. But I'm more curious about the here and now. So we see the proposal and it looks amazing. What about the here and now? What about what's on the table for our commissioners and our town versus, is there a possibility to feel comfortable as a town to say no to a developer and not try to work through the pains of this is what we need, but we're not quite getting there, and then just accepting this? And so what does that look like in terms of future planning and trying to put our, right? We might get a little bit of this, but while we get that, we're sacrificing this vision of what we're looking at. This isn't, possibility of 9 to 10 months from now when we actually have a clear cut of where we'll be. So what does that look like now?
Yeah. So just to clarify one thing, this isn't a proposal. I can't remember the word you used, but this isn't a proposal. This is just to demonstrate these ideas. Hopefully you get so excited about it, you think of it in that way, so I mission accomplished. But yes, you can say no. And I think you all have been doing so for a little while, right? So you had a time where you weren't allowing things to happen in the village, right? So the other thing is, because nearly all your developments, if not all of them, are coming in using PD, you have complete discretion over what you can tell the developers you want them to do. They've chosen that path. They said, I want to make my own rules up, and you say, okay, here's the bargain. We're going to tell you what you can do and what you can't do. Some places that we go are just so booming that they're happy to just be like, no, that's not what we do here, right? Or no, did you come to the Planet Palooza? Like it's not adopted yet, but that's where we're going, and so there are ways that you can do that, I hope that, because you're using, it's like the one moment where a subjective PD process is beneficial is when you're going through a process like this, you can use all the things that you learned during this process to make decisions about things that come before you in the meantime. But I can't recommend any more strongly that you all fast track moving forward with the zoning and getting it done. Because we go to places and they'll say, oh yeah, the zoning ordinance for having you update, it's been in place for, 20 years and it took us 4 years to get that thing adopted. And I said, well, I don't know, are you serious? What were you doing for 4 years? Well, couldn't quite decide how, couldn't quite decide this or that, it's like all of these things, which is not abnormal. So we always recommend to people move as quickly as possible as you can without skipping over important things and missing something, but hopefully that's what we're here to help you all. And then if something's not like you wanted it, then you just fix it. You just do a cleanup, like schedule a zoning cleanup for 12 months. And we're gonna fix the things that came, that we didn't see, that, we didn't realize when it came to the person or whatever. There's no such thing as a perfect document, right? The zoning ordinance is very complicated. So it'll be a lengthy document, even though we're gonna make it as short as possible and as cool and as easy to use as possible. There will be things, we may misspell Nolansville, right? Who knows, right? And so you're gonna need to clean up things anyway, and some of them are superficial and some of them are substantive. And
so in your experience, what's the absorption percentage of cost that the town for, like, so if a developer comes in and they're saying, well, we may be able to do that, but we might need your help.
Yeah.
What does that, is that really something for the developer you're able to push back to and have them, I mean, if we're going with this overall, what we'd like between green space and roads and the protection of waterways, is that really something that we hold the developer 100% responsible, that's on the town responsibility, right? Here's your checklist, this is what you need to do.
Yeah, what happens on the private property is their responsibility. What you've done for them is spend the time, the money to get a new zoning ordinance written to support them so they didn't have to come back here for 9 months, 8 months, 12 months, and just haggle over every little thing, right? And so that's a huge gift for them, and they all know it. They're all, except for those who don't want to give you a village, then, but those who feel like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. The other thing is, as you're moving things forward and the first few projects are coming out, like you may want to do some things to facilitate, because setting that time and getting it right and showing that it's possible is so important. However, if you subsidize something too much, you make too sweet a deal, then that's the only way they did it was because the town did this and this, So there's a fine line, but if someone's willing to come in without fighting you and follow your vision for the future, do everything you can do to make it happen.
So then the last question I think we have would be in relation to the school, so being a district employee. Schools are often the last of
It's the lineup.
what comes up
Yeah.
in development
So I
in
suppose
town, and what that looks like. At what point does the town kind of reach out, where is that connection piece that is happening? Eventually, when obviously there's a lot of multi-family and mixed use that is being thought of in your drawing.
Possibly allowed.
Possibly allowed. And so what does that look like? I mean, we're bouncing it to the end, but I think about all of this living that is coming. Where does this fit into what our picture looks like overall?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things you all need to do, in addition to researching that internal capture that we're talking about a minute ago from a traffic perspective, the other thing you'll need to do is get a grasp on the realistic projections for kids in a mixed-use village, right? And so right now, people are like, oh, well, multifamily is going to generate lots of kids. I know they said it's apartments, people don't want to raise kids, but I know people are raising kids in apartments and all that. And so a suburban, lower rent apartment complex, yes, it does. But what you see here, you can imagine the thing you're always struggle is keeping it reasonably priced for all the people who want to downsize from the big lot and subdivision and move above the shop and all that. And so you end up having you need to make sure you're realistic about how many kids this type of development generates, not just multifamily. It's very different than multifamily that y'all talk about. So the other thing is, if you notice in bigger ones, a lot of these new walkable neighborhoods have schools in them. And the developers see that as a huge amenity. And they're like, yes, there's the land, welcome, print your school. And in fact, I noticed when I drive around here, I see like 3 of the schools in West Haven, here, here, and here. And the reason is because when they were going through the process of making West Haven, Williamson County Schools came in and they said, well, here's our model. And the developer says, no thanks, that's not really a neighborhood school and that doesn't fit in what we're trying to do. And they work it out, and they go 2 stories and all that. And Williamson County says, wow, that's actually a really good model. We'll use that from now on. And that's why you have the schools around here that look just like the one in West Haven. So I think that, you know, there's a certain amount of school kids that the more of the neighborhood aspect of it will do. It's not the multifamily you should actually worry about. It's the single family part of it that you should worry about, because it's a magnet for families, because it's such a magical experience growing up in the neighborhood. Yeah, we have people at home though.
One thing you said.
One thing you said that will speak to what Jessica is asking about, that I see as a hopeful part of this process, is if we get this right, we don't have to use the PD process, and it doesn't have to be, because that will extend the time. That makes things pretty political, because it's 3 votes up here that, you know, and so it's in the developer's interest to pick the 3 votes that are up there. So this puts the rules on the table and everybody knows up front. And they were rules that were put together by the town. So I think that could speed things up quite a bit if we get it right.
Yeah, I hope that people trust the process, because one thing I forgot to say, and I should have said at the beginning so I could see Victor's face, is, by the way, he's sick. So I made him come tonight because I wanted him to see this, but hopefully not sick enough to make him sick. But nonetheless, I think he's going home to get some rest. But the thing about this process is, no one has seen this presentation, any of the images, any of it, until you all saw it. Not Victor, not staff, no one saw it. And so I always love when I'm sitting here and going like, next slide, looking to see, you know, like, so as much as it's interesting to hear all of y'all saw that, I like seeing our clients' face too when we unveil all of this. So hopefully we won't get any angry emails. That's not why he left, to write him that email. But nonetheless, this process is about as pure as it can be. And so that's why I keep saying bring people with you, because this isn't that big of a room. Luckily, you're not that big of a town, so we have a pretty good sample here. But I worry that there's people who are sitting at home who are going to be afraid and who are not going to voice their opinions and considerations until we're all up here. And at that point, it's like, it's not too late, but it's too late to do it right. You can't figure out things up here like this, right? When we do private development projects, this is a side note, we do a Planapalooza for our project. Our client, our developer client says, yeah, we set up a studio, and we let everybody come in, and they all, it's not a big surprise. And you're like, what, there's a development coming up, it's here, whoa. It's like we invite everyone in, that's the process. And if you really want to do, some communities actually require a process like that for new development, not just a neighborhood meeting and, you know, they come and they sort of try to convince the neighbors of what it is they're doing. It's like, we show up with blank pieces of paper. None of the stuff that the plans or the renderings that you saw tonight, we drew them while we were here, you know? And so that's the way to have a process that everyone feels heard. And as you said, you know, how many people have at least one thing they don't like? And that's okay, right? But what you don't want is to have a town that was designed because everyone lost the same amount. We all equally lost, so no one really likes it. It's not village, it's not suburban, it's some sort of weird hybrid thing. And so I think the more you can kind of stick to your guns and be pure and in your thought and your vision and realize that we're creating something for everyone, the better off you're gonna be and the more successful the town will be and the better your quality of life will be. So don't you want to be dinner at some point?